Cozumel is cancelled, Dad. That's how my son ended our father-son trip, like he was handing me a pillow for the fall. He said it in my Indianapolis kitchen on a grey Sunday morning, November 23rd, 8:17 a.m., his gym bag slung over one shoulder, the smell of winter and cologne following him in. I stared at the mug in my hand, as if coffee could rewrite sentences. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. Evan smiled the way people do when they believe they're doing a kindness. Prices jumped, Kara's got a work crisis, and honestly it's better to be smart right now. Smart. That word moved around my ribs like a splinter. I'd prepaid the $3,550 resort deposit with my card, used my miles to cover his airfare, and taken the week off from the duplex in Fountain Square I managed for retirement. "We'll rebook in spring," he said, hugging me quick. "Love you." The front door closed, soft as a lie. The oven timer dinged for the biscuits I'd put in without thinking. I turned it off and just listened to the room settle. Silence has edges if you let it. The Chihuahuan blue water we were supposed to see together flickered in my head, then went dark. I set the mug down and opened the junk drawer. There it was, the white Cruise Co. envelope, with the resort invoice clipped to my card slip, dated October 2nd, my name printed firmly above the numbers. "Cancelled," he'd said. If it was cancelled, why did my bank app still show a green pending circle, like a promise nobody meant to keep? I walked out to the garage, touched the old dive bag my late wife and I used when Evan was a teenager, and Florida still seemed like something we could touch without counting pennies. The bag had a scuff on the zipper from a spring break long gone. "We'll rebook," he'd said, and the words felt like pennies too, light, round, rolling away under appliances. Back inside, I folded the invoice and slid it beneath a manila folder on the counter. I told myself I believed him. Belief is a habit men my age are slow to break. I wiped the counter the way my wife used to, slow circles, and felt my throat tighten. This trip wasn't just a vacation. It was a repair job for two men who needed one. I'm 62. Every receipt is my pension. Every reservation is a promise I made to myself to keep living. The printer coughed from the back room. I didn't remember hitting print. A misaddressed email slid onto the tray, auto-forwarded by the old Wi-Fi. "Balcony upgrade, 2800. Congratulations!" Friday's date, 4:06 p.m. My name on the card line. I stared at the page and then at the oven. Clock 8:41 a.m. The numbers lined up like nails in a board you don't want to look at too closely. Put the paper under the manila folder with the invoice and pressed my palm flat on top like holding a heartbeat. "Trust, but verify," my wife used to say when Evan borrowed tools. I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the doorway a long time, letting the dark and the quiet tell me what I already knew. Cozumel wasn't cancelled. I was, and the bill had my name on it. By Tuesday morning, the kitchen chair felt like a courtroom bench, and I was both witness and defendant. My wife's photo watched from the mantel, that calm half-smile she always had when she knew I was lying to myself. I wasn't angry yet, just hollow, like someone had taken a scoop out of my chest and left air in its place. I logged into my AT&T account out of habit, not suspicion. That's how I found it, the small red banner at the top. 48-day International Day Pass activated. My heart stuttered. Evan's line, ending in 3916, active since Monday morning, pinging towers in Miami, then Cozumel. I didn't need GPS coordinates. Those little roaming charges were breadcrumbs of betrayal. I printed the statement, watched the paper curl hot off the printer, the ink still tacky under my thumb. I wrote the date across the top, November 25th, and underlined it twice. "Trust but verify," I whispered, hearing my late wife again. I sat there staring at the document. 3 pages of data usage and timestamps that spelled out the geography of a lie. At 10:12 a.m. Monday, he'd gone through Miami International. By 1:44 p.m., roaming Cozumel, Mexico. It was all there, clear as the sunrise he was probably enjoying with Kara, sipping some neon drink. I pressed record on my iPhone's voice memo and spoke softly, like dictating an affidavit to my future self. Tuesday, November 25th, 9:42 a.m. Found proof Evan is in Cozumel. $48 daily roaming activated. Resort deposit still pending. Upgrade bill charge Friday. I stopped, breathing shallow. He didn't just cancel the trip. He cancelled me. The house was quiet enough that the furnace clicking on made me jump. I poured a second cup of tea I didn't want and opened Facebook. Nothing new there. Evan rarely posted publicly, but Kara's friends. That's where the truth likes to hide in plain sight. I found it through a mutual, a sunlit balcony, turquoise ocean behind her sunglasses, and a shadow cast on the glass door, broad shoulders, familiar posture, my son. The caption read, "Paradise with my favorite human." The timestamp, Monday, 3:16 p.m. I screenshotted it and printed another page. Proof 3. I set all three on the table. Invoice, roaming bill, screenshot. The trinity of my humiliation. The paper edges curled like they were embarrassed for me. I laid my head on the cool table for a while and let my body do what it needed. A small sound escaped, half sigh, half sob. I hadn't cried in years, not since my wife's last night in the hospice when she told me, "Keep living, not watching." But this was a kind of mourning too. Not for her, but for the trust I thought I'd passed on to our son. Around noon, I wiped my face, grabbed my jacket, and stepped out into the Indianapolis chill. The air bit back. It helped. I drove to the duplex I manage, checked on the tenants, and replaced a leaky faucet just to feel something useful. The hiss of the water and the click of the wrench grounded me. Manual work always does. When I got home, the answering machine light blinked, a relic of the 2000s, still faithful. A message from Tina, our travel agent. "Hey, just following up. Mr. Reynolds, everything's still confirmed for your Cozumel stay. Check in Monday the 24th. Call me if there's any confusion. Confirmed. Not cancelled. That night I couldn't eat. The biscuits from Sunday were still on the counter, rock-hard reminders. I sat on the couch, TV flickering without meaning, the sound muted. Evan had always been impulsive. New cars, new hobbies, but this felt orchestrated. Kara's influence? Maybe, but the decision to lie, that was his alone. I reached for my notebook, the same yellow legal pad I've used for budgets and bills for 30 years. At the top, I wrote one word in block letters, plan, because if grief is the first stage of betrayal, action is the second, before bed. I called my sister Dina. She picked up on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Everything okay?" she asked. "I just need your accounting brain tomorrow," I said. "No panic, just paperwork." She hesitated. "This about Evan?" I didn't answer directly. "Bring your calculator." After we hung up, I stared at the old photo album on my shelf, Evan at 10 years old. Snorkel mask too big, sand stuck in his hair, grinning with the innocence of someone who hadn't yet learned to lie to survive. I whispered to that photo, "I'm not mad. I'm just done being easy." Then I turned off the lights and sat in the dark a moment longer, holding the stack of papers to my chest like armor. He was in Cozumel, and by the time he got back, he'd learned what accountability feels like when it comes with a ledger. By Wednesday morning, November 26th, I had stopped shaking. Anger cooled into something sharper, focus. I was done replaying his words in my head. "Cozumel's cancelled, Dad." Every time I heard it, it lost some of its sting and gained structure, like lumber being cut to build something new. The sky was a washed-out white over Indianapolis when I parked outside Tina's office in Broad Ripple. The bell above her door jingled, that small-town sound that used to mean honesty. Her eyebrows lifted when she saw me. "Mr. Reynolds, you're still going on Monday, right?" I smiled politely. "Actually, that's what I came to ask." She tilted her screen toward me, fingers quick on the keyboard. Reservation shows confirmed. 2 guests checked in Monday. Oh, there's an upgrade note here. Friday the 21st, 4:06 p.m. Card on file. Yours. She frowned. "I assumed you'd changed your mind." I nodded slowly, the room spinning just enough to remind me I was still human. "Could you print those emails for me, please?" "Of course." She handed me a neat stack, subject lines, timestamps, vendor confirmations. I could smell the faint tone of warmth as she slid them across. You might want to keep this, in case there's a billing dispute. I folded the papers into my leather folder. There's going to be one, I said quietly. On my way out, I paused by her travel poster, Chichen Itza, glowing in fake sunlight. Funny how paper ruins the illusion when you stand too close. By evening, you sound like Mark. Then call him Mark, my late wife's brother, a small-town lawyer with a quiet sense of justice. I texted him, need help, adult child misused funds. Want remedy, not war. He called within the hour. Frank, we'll do this clean. Draft a repayment agreement and a trust addendum. If he signs, fine. If not, you protect your assets. His voice steadied me. We'll finalize Friday afternoon. You can hand it to him face to face. Holiday dinner, I said. Saturday night, family only. Mark paused. You're planning something. I'm preparing something. After we hung up, I stopped at the electronics store near the interstate. I bought a projector and a pull-down screen, $198.42 on my debit card. The young cashier grinned. Family movie night? I smiled back. Something like that. Back home, I set the box on the dining table beside the stack of proof. The projector would turn numbers into light, light into truth. I could already see the slideshow, the invoice, the roaming report, the screenshots. A silent story that didn't need me to raise my voice. Before bed, I logged into my home security app and changed the garage keypad code. I moved the small brass key that opens my safe from its usual drawer to a deposit box at the bank. Boundaries are easier to enforce when they have locks. That night, I dreamed of an ocean not in Cozumel, but right here, grey, endless, honest. The kind of water that doesn't lie about its temperature. Thursday would be Thanksgiving. And for the first time in my life, I wouldn't say grace for family harmony. I'd say grace for clarity, because the next 48 hours weren't about getting even. They were about getting free. Thanksgiving morning, November 27th, broke cold and still over Indianapolis. The streets were quiet, the kind of silence that makes every sound feel like a decision. I brewed coffee, set the cup beside the growing pile of documents, and watched steam rise against the morning light. Today wasn't about turkey. It was about proof. At 9:10 a.m., they called AT&T. Customer care, I said, steady voice. I need a detailed usage summary for line ending in 3916 for the dates November 24th through 27th. The woman on the line sounded cheerful, unaware she was helping me rebuild the architecture of a lie. 10 minutes later, the email landed in my inbox. Subject International Usage Summary. I opened it and there it was. Black and white, time-stamped, irrefutable. Monday 10:12 a.m. Miami International Airport. Monday 1:44 p.m. Cozumel, Mexico. Tuesday 8:09 a.m. Roaming data Cozumel. Each line hit harder than the last. I printed it immediately and highlighted the entries in yellow, steady hand, slow strokes. I'd spent 40 years working with measurements and precision. Now I was measuring deceit. By 11:00 a.m., another email came through, Tina forwarding the vendor confirmation. $2,800 balcony upgrade approved. Card, F. Reynolds. Guest confirmed same day. I read it twice, then printed and stapled it to the original resort invoice. 2 holes on the top corner, 1 thin metal fastener through both. A spine of betrayal, perfectly aligned. I made myself lunch, just a sandwich, but couldn't eat more than a bite. My appetite had shifted from food to clarity. The documents spread across my table like crime scene markers. Invoice, upgrade, roaming, screenshot. Everything lined up in sequence. At 4 p.m., Evan texted, "Miss you. Wish we were together. Love you, Dad." Attached was a picture of a neon blue cocktail. The image was cropped tight. No ocean, no face, just a straw bending under sunlight. I zoomed in anyway, scanning reflections on the glass like a detective. There, faint but visible, a tan wrist wearing his silver dive bracelet, the one I gave him when he turned 21. I didn't reply right away. I walked to the window, stared at the bare maple tree in the yard, and thought about what my wife used to say. If you want to teach someone respect, don't shout. Show your math. So, I replied with a single heart emoji. Then I saved the image, renamed it, printed it, and added it to the file. At 5:30, I drove to my sister Dina's for Thanksgiving dinner. The house smelled like rosemary and old comfort. She hugged me tighter than usual. "You ready?" she asked softly. "I'm steady," I said. After dinner, when plates were cleared, I handed her the stack of papers. She flipped through them, whistled under her breath. "You've got him boxed in 6 ways from Sunday. I'm not out to destroy him," I said. "I just need to stop the bleeding. Then Saturday's the surgery," she said, sliding the folder back to me. "You'll need calm hands and clean tools." On my way home, I stopped by Mark's office. The lights were off, but I slid an envelope through the mail slot. A thank you note, a deposit check for his retainer, and a sticky note that read, "Saturday, 6 p.m. holiday dinner reveal. Back at my house, I laid everything out one last time." The projector sat unopened on the table, box still crisp. I could imagine the moment clearly. The lights dimmed, the first slide appearing, numbers glowing on the wall like courtroom evidence. The clock read 10:47 p.m. when I finally exhaled. I gathered every document, slid them into a binder, and labeled the front, "Cozumel, evidence." My handwriting was steady. Before bed, I opened the old photo album again. There was Evan at 16, holding his first paycheck from the hardware store, grinning with pride. Back then, he'd called me that same night to say, "I paid my own way, Dad." I closed the book. "You used to understand the value of $1, I whispered. "Maybe you just need reminding." By midnight, I'd written my opening line for Saturday on a small index card. It said, "Before dessert, I'd like to show you something." The plan was ready. The trap didn't need malice, just light. Black Friday, November 28th, arrived with wind and noise, the kind of day when everyone in Indianapolis seemed to be chasing a sale. I wasn't chasing anything. I was calculating. I'd left the house at 9:45 a.m. with the binder under my arm and drove downtown to First Midwest Bank. The teller recognized me. "Morning, Mr. Reynolds," she said, sliding open the metal gate to the safe deposit room. I rented a small box and placed 3 things inside: the brass key from my home safe, a photocopy of my duplex deed, and the repayment schedule Dina had drawn up last night. On top, I set the folder labeled "Cozumel, evidence." When the clerk locked the box, the click felt final, like sealing a casket on my old way of trusting. At 1 p.m., I was at Mark's office, legal pad in hand. He spread the drafts across his desk. "We'll start with a trust addendum," he said, voice calm as a judge. "Conditions of access: no loans without collateral, no co-signatures without written agreement, and misuse of your accounts equals immediate removal as beneficiary." He slid another document across. "Repayment schedule: $6,250 over 18 months at 2%. First payment due January 1st. He looked up at me. "Fair but firm." "Like you," I nodded. "He can choose decency or distance." "Good line," Mark said. "Use it." By 2:15 p.m., both documents were printed, marked, and waiting for notarization tomorrow. He folded them neatly and handed me a manila envelope. "Keep them dry, keep them close." Driving home, I passed the store where I'd bought the projector. I smiled, thinking how Saturday's dinner would play out. Just me, Evan, Kara, Dina, and the truth, 108 inches wide. At 4:20 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Evan. "Hey, big family dinner Saturday?" "Kara wants to bring a pie," I typed back. "Absolutely. 6 sharp. Bring your appetite 6 sharp." The phrase felt almost ceremonial. I spent the next hour testing the projector. The first slide filled my living room wall with the Cruise Co. invoice, my name, and the $3,450 deposit printed crisp. The second slide, the $2,800 balcony upgrade, made the numbers seem even louder. Then came the AT&T usage log. Each timestamp glowed yellow, like lanterns guiding me to Saturday. The fourth slide was the Instagram screenshot. Kara's post tagged San Miguel de Cozumel, the reflection of Evan's bracelet, clear when magnified. The fifth was blank with the heading "Next Steps." I left it intentionally empty. Tomorrow night, those steps would be his to choose. I dimmed the lights, poured myself iced tea instead of bourbon, and watched the slideshow again, this time as if I were the audience. I pictured the room full, the clink of utensils pausing mid-air, the silence after the first slide. I wanted calm, not chaos. Justice that tasted like truth, not vengeance. At 6 p.m., Dina called. "You ready for tomorrow?" "I'm ready for clarity," I said. She chuckled softly. "Keep your voice low and your dates loud." That night, I set the dining table the way my wife used to, cloth napkins, polished silver, and candles unlit. In the center, I placed the projector remote beside a folded card that read, "Reserved for Truth." I pored over every detail, the timing, the order of slides, where I'd stand. The oven timer dinged as I baked a test casserole for Saturday. That small sound, so ordinary, anchored me. Real life still existed outside of betrayal. By 10 p.m., I had my speech written in full, calm, factual, unshakable. I would present the evidence, explain the repayment, and offer one last chance for decency. No yelling, no drama. Just truth on the wall. I turned off the lights, but before heading to bed, I glanced at my phone. A new Instagram story popped up from Kara's friend, a sunset. Evan's voice faint in the background saying, "Dad totally bought it." My chest tightened, then went cold. So this was never a mistake. It was a joke. I turned off the phone, set it face down, and whispered to the empty room, "All right, son. Tomorrow we'll see who laughs last." The clock ticked toward midnight. The house was ready. The proof was waiting. And so was I. Saturday, November 29th. The day of the reckoning started quietly, almost mockingly so. Frost covered the porch railings outside my duplex like thin glass. I could hear the faint hum of traffic down Virginia Avenue, people running errands, none of them knowing that inside my little brick house a father was getting ready to show his son what truth looks like under a spotlight. At noon, I went to my office printer to grab the notarized copies Mark had emailed after his morning appointment. The machine whirred, spit out 3 pages and then, unexpectedly, a 4th. It wasn't the trust document. It was an email forwarded by mistake from Kara's account. The subject line made my stomach knot. "Thanks for the balcony splurge." The body of the message was worse. Kara's friend Lacey writing, "That sunset looked unreal. Lucky you two pulled it off." Attached was a selfie of the 4 of them clinking glasses, Evan grinning wide. Beneath it, his reply, "Told Dad we cancelled. LOL, we'll rebook with him someday." I sat there staring. It wasn't cruelty born of malice. It was the casual kind. The kind that assumes you'll never find out. That kind of cruelty cuts deeper. By 2 p.m., I was in Mark's office for the notarization. He slid the final signed documents across his oak desk. "If he signs this repayment schedule, he stays in the trust. If not, you file Monday morning." He leaned forward. "Frank, don't get emotional tomorrow. Just stay factual." "I plan to," I said, but we both knew emotion would show up whether invited or not. At 4 p.m., the house was prepped like a stage set. The dining table gleamed under the chandelier. The projector screen hung against the far wall, cables hidden. On the hutch behind me sat the manila envelope with the repayment plan and trust addendum. Dina arrived early, carrying a casserole and her calm presence. "You sure you want to do this tonight?" "Yes," I said. Truth doesn't age well. We rehearsed the sequence once, lights dimmed, invoice upgrade roaming screenshot. Dina nodded. "It's airtight." At 5:58 p.m., headlights swept across the driveway. Evan's silver SUV. Kara's laugh echoed as they walked up the steps, hand in hand, carrying a pecan pie. The smell of coconut sunscreen trailed in with them, faint but unmistakable. "Dad!" Evan grinned a little too wide. "Hope you're hungry." "Starved," I said. "Come on in." We ate quietly for the first 10 minutes. Forks clinked, small talk stumbled. Kara complimented the table setting. Dina asked about their flight home on purpose. Evan hesitated, then said, "Oh, we drove in from Chicago last night." His tone was breezy, but his knee bounced under the table. When plates were half empty, I stood. "Before dessert, I'd like to show you something." Kara blinked. "A slideshow?" "Something like that." I dimmed the lights and pressed the remote. The first slide filled the wall. The Cruiseco invoice, $3,450 deposit, my name in bold. Evan chuckled nervously. "Dad, what?" I clicked again. "The balcony upgrade, $2,800. Time-stamped Friday 4:06 p.m. Click. The AT&T usage log. His line traveling Miami, Cozumel. Click. A screenshot of Kara's Instagram story, geotag, San Miguel de Cozumel. His reflection visible in the balcony glass. The room fell into an airless hush. Even the furnace seemed to pause. Evan's fork dropped. "Dad, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think," I said quietly. "You lied. You used my card. And you thought I wouldn't notice," Kara's voice cracked. "It was my idea." "Then you'll understand why you're both in these slides," I said, clicking once more. The final slide appeared. Repayment plan, next steps. I set the manila envelope on the table, slid 2 pens beside it. "You'll repay $6,250 over 18 months at 2% interest. You'll sign tonight, or I'll file this with my lawyer Monday. Sign, and you stay in the trust. Refuse, and you're out." No anger, just accounting. Evan's eyes glistened, voice small. "Dad, I messed up." "Then fix it," I said. Kara stared at the table, mute. Dina reached forward, steady as ever. "Fair terms," she said. Merciful even. The projector's light flickered between us, pale and relentless. It painted truth on every face in that room. The oven timer dinged for dessert. Nobody moved. The projector hummed softly, its light still spilling across the dining room like a silent judge. No one spoke. Evan's face looked drained, his tan already paling under the cold truth reflected on the wall. Kara stared at her plate as if the mashed potatoes could swallow her whole. I took a slow breath and said quietly, "You can eat later. For now, you're going to listen." Evan rubbed his face with both hands. "Dad, please, this isn't—" "It's exactly what it is," I said. "You told me the trip was cancelled to save money. You knew I'd already paid. You used my card again for an upgrade. You'd lied not just once, but every day since you boarded that plane." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Don't talk yet." I picked up the first printed invoice, the one Tina gave me Wednesday. "Here's the original resort deposit, $3,450. My name, my card, paid October 2nd. I set it on the table. Here's the upgrade, $2,800, approved November 21st, 4:06 p.m. I laid it right beside the first, then the roaming summary. "Your phone pinged Miami and Cozumel. You paid $48 a day for international access. Funny thing, when I cancelled our trip, my phone stayed right here." The projector light flickered over the papers as I spoke. Kara shifted in her chair, voice trembling. "We just thought it was easier than disappointing you." "Disappointment isn't theft," I said. "And you didn't disappoint me. You disrespected me." Dina cleared her throat gently. "Frank, maybe let them—" I shook my head. "They need to hear all of it first." I clicked to the next slide. A screenshot of the message Kara's friend Lacey had sent. "Thanks for the balcony splurge," followed by Evan's smug response. The laughter in that text seemed to echo in the quiet room. Kara buried her face in her hands. "Oh my God!" Evan swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the glowing screen. "Dad, I panicked. Kara wanted the upgrade. I didn't think you'd—" "Don't you dare blame her," I said evenly. "You had a choice." "You always do." He looked down. "You're right." The room went still again. The clock ticked. Outside, a siren wailed faintly through the neighborhood, then faded into distance. I turned off the projector, and the sudden darkness made everyone blink. I reached into the manila envelope and pulled out the repayment agreement. "This is what happens next. You repay the total, $6,250, over 18 months, 2% interest. You'll sign tonight. You'll stay in my trust only if you honor these terms. One missed payment, one excuse, and you're out permanently." I slid the pen across the table. "If you'd like to read it first, go ahead. It's not long." Evan stared at the paper as if it were written in another language. "You're serious?" "I'm tired," I said. "Not angry, just done funding irresponsibility." Dina added softly, "This is protection, not punishment." Kara whispered, "It was supposed to be our last trip before everything got hard. Evan thought he could fix it later." I looked at her, not unkindly. "Later is how people go broke, Kara." Evan picked up the pen. His hand trembled, but he signed. The sound of the ballpoint scratching across the page was the only noise in the room. He pushed the papers back to me. I'll pay you back every cent, I nodded. Good. The first payment's due January 1st. I'll expect a transfer, not a promise. He looked up, his eyes wet. I didn't mean to hurt you. Intent doesn't erase damage, I said. You didn't just lie. You made me question whether your mother and I raised a man or a dependent. He flinched like I'd hit him. I didn't enjoy saying it, but truth isn't supposed to taste sweet. I picked up the papers, stacked them neatly, and slipped them back into the envelope. You can go now if you want. Desserts cooling in the kitchen. Kara stood first. I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds. Her voice cracked, but I didn't look at her. She walked to the door, eyes shiny under the light. Evan hesitated. Dad, can I come by tomorrow? I met his gaze. If you're coming to argue, no. If you're coming to start over, yes. He nodded once. Then I'll be here. The door closed behind, and I still love him. I know that too. She stood, packed up her casserole dish, and before leaving, turned back and said, Sometimes love looks like paperwork. When she was gone, I sat alone at the table. The documents lay before me like small monuments of truth. The oven timer dinged softly again, the one I'd set hours earlier for the pie none of us would eat. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and pulled it out anyway. Steam rose, cinnamon and sugar thick in the air. I set it on the counter and whispered, Justice served. Then I turned off the projector, drew the curtains, and for the first time all week, felt the faintest hint of peace. Sunday morning, November 30th, the sky over Indianapolis was a pale, clean blue, the kind that always shows up after a storm. I brewed a pot of coffee, but this time it wasn't out of habit. It was ritual. Something about pouring that first cup felt like reclaiming space. At 9:05 a.m., a soft knock rattled the front door. I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. Evan stood there, hair damp, jacket zipped to the throat, eyes ringed in sleepless grey. He held an envelope in one hand and a folded sheet of paper in the other. Dad, he said quietly, I signed everything. And I brought this. He opened the envelope and slid $600 cash onto the table. Refunds. From stuff I returned, and the shore excursions we didn't take. He looked up, embarrassed but steady. I know it's not much yet. I nodded, said nothing, and motioned for him to sit. He hesitated like a schoolboy, waiting for permission that never came, then sat down. There's a note in there from Tina, he said. She said she got your call. I unfolded the note. Tina's familiar, tidy handwriting read, Client acknowledged miscommunication. Accepts repayment plan. Apologized sincerely. It was the first time in a week I smiled without bitterness. Good, I said. You're starting right. At 10 a.m. we put Mark on speakerphone. His voice came through steady as always. Evan, the repayment plan is official as of this moment. $6,250 principal, 2% interest, 18 months. If you stay on schedule, no legal filings. If you miss a payment, the trust clause triggers. Fair? Yes, sir, Evan said. Mark added gently. Frank's not punishing you. He's teaching you boundaries most people never learn. When the call ended, Evan reached for the papers again, as if touching them could undo what he'd done. I don't know why I lied, Dad. Maybe I just wanted to impress her. Maybe I didn't want to feel like your kid anymore. I looked at him for a long time. Grown men don't impress people with other people's money. They stand on what they earn. He nodded, shame softening into resolve. After he left, I took the envelope and the signed copies to First Midwest Bank. The clerk greeted me with a polite smile, and I slipped them into the same safe deposit box that now held the duplex deed and my brass key. The metallic clunk echoed through the room, a sound I'll never forget, the sound of accountability being filed away. By noon, the house felt lighter. The evidence binder sat closed on the table, and for the first time, it didn't look like a wound. It looked like closure. That afternoon, I called AT&T and removed international roaming access from Evan's line. Only I can activate it again, I told the rep. She said, understood. It wasn't spite, it was protection. Monday morning, I changed the garage keypad again and texted Evan the new code, for emergencies or helping hands only. He replied, understood. On Wednesday, the first automated ACH transfer came through. 347, right on time. Seeing it hit my account didn't make me rich, but it made me breathe easier. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about a son who finally realized that paying something back can heal more than it costs. Justice, I learned, isn't a hammer. It's paperwork, consistency, and silence that doesn't need to be broken. I stood at the window, coffee in hand, watching frost melt from the porch railings. This wasn't revenge. It was a correction, one that finally balanced the books. The first snow came that Sunday night, soft as memory. By morning, the alley behind my duplex looked like someone had laid out a clean sheet over all the mess. I stepped outside, breath turning white in the cold, and listened to the quiet hum of the neighborhood waking up. The worst week of my life had ended, but something else had begun, something steadier, colder, truer. I salted the steps the way I always do after a freeze. Habit keeps a man honest. While I worked, I thought about Cozumel, the sunlight, the turquoise water, the kind of heat you can almost forgive. I realized I'd been picturing that place like it was an escape, when really it had just been another story I told myself about repair. What I needed wasn't miles of ocean. It was a line in the sand. Inside, I made cocoa instead of coffee. The smell of chocolate and cinnamon filled the kitchen, familiar, comforting. On the counter, the old Canon camera waited where I'd left it after the dinner. I turned it on, flipped through the pictures I'd taken that night. The slides projected on the wall, the envelope on the table, the faint light on Evan's face as he realized it was over. Proof doesn't always live in paper. Sometimes it lives in the silence after an apology. I printed one photograph, the dining table glowing under the projector light, the manila envelope at the center like a compass. I pinned it to the corkboard above my desk. Not a trophy, a reminder. My phone buzzed. A message from Evan. Payment 2 scheduled. Picked up extra shifts at work. Thanks for not giving up on me. I stared at it for a long time before replying. Keep going. Don't talk it, do it. Later, I opened my late wife's recipe book. The pages still smelled faintly of vanilla and lemon zest. Her handwriting ran across the top of one page. Orange loaf, good for cold days and bad moods. I followed her notes line by line, and soon the oven filled the house with that smell, sweet, citrus, forgiving. When the loaf cooled, I wrapped a slice in foil for Evan. Small peace offerings don't fix everything, but they say what words can't. Then I took a note card from my desk and wrote a line I wanted him to remember. A line I needed to remember too. You didn't lose me, you gave me away. I taped it to the inside of the front door. Every time I leave the house now, I see it. It keeps me from confusing mercy with weakness. By evening, the snow had stopped. The projector screen still hung in the dining room, white and blank, like it was waiting for the next story. I decided to leave it up, not as a threat, as a witness. The truth had been painful, humiliating even, but it was clean now. And clean is rare. When I turned off the lights, I said goodnight to the house out loud, to the silence that had once felt empty and now felt earned. People think revenge ends with noise. It doesn't. It ends with stillness, the kind that tells you the world is finally balanced again. And in that stillness, for the first time since the word cancelled, I could breathe without bitterness. By mid-January, the world outside was brittle with cold, and life had quietly rearranged itself into something bearable. The repayment plan had turned into a rhythm, the first of every month, a neat transfer labeled E. Reynolds, F. Reynolds, 347.22. Each notification hit my phone like a pulse. Not excitement, not triumph, just confirmation that order had returned. Tina emailed mid-month. Your son stopped by. Changed the light fixture himself. Said he wanted to make things right. She attached a picture of him on a ladder, sleeves rolled, face set with the concentration of a man who finally knows the difference between effort and apology. I saved the photo without meaning to. Kara faded out of the picture soon after. No fight, no scene, just smaller texts, fewer posts, silence that widened until even social media stopped pretending. Evan told me one afternoon, we weren't good for each other. I only nodded. Growth has its own grief. In February, he asked if he could help with repairs at the duplex on weekends. Work off some of the debt faster, he said. I told him, bring gloves and coffee. He showed up every Saturday at 7 sharp. Sometimes we barely spoke, but we didn't need to. Nails, paint, and quiet can say more than talk ever does. By March, Mark and I met at his office again. We reviewed the trust addendum. No changes needed. He's holding steady, Mark said. Let's keep the clause another year. We shook on it. I left feeling lighter. One crisp April morning, Evan arrived with 2 coffees and a toolbox. Got an early start, he said. He sanded the porch railing in silence while I trimmed the hedge. For a moment, the air smelled like sawdust and spring, the same scent from years ago when he'd helped me build his first treehouse. The difference now was that he'd shown up without asking what he'd get in return. By May, I decided to plan another trip. Not far, just Key West. Domestic, refundable. A place where the ocean doesn't come with old ghosts. I told Evan I was going, and he smiled. You should. You earned it. That night I went to my bank box and removed a paper labeled Things I Still Own. I replaced it with a new one. Things I Choose. The list was shorter, simpler. Peace, honesty, boundaries that hold. Life hadn't returned to what it was before Cozumel. It had become something sturdier. The bitterness that once sat in my chest like a stone was gone, replaced by something quieter, understanding. On the first Saturday of June, Evan brought breakfast instead of tools. We ate on the porch we'd rebuilt together. He looked out at the street and said, You know, Dad, I didn't deserve how patient you were. I took a sip of coffee, let the sunlight warm my hands. Patience wasn't for you, I said. It was for the man I raised and hoped would come back. He didn't answer, but the way he nodded told me he understood. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the smell of cut grass and new beginnings. For once, I didn't think about receipts, upgrades, or trust clauses. I thought about how even broken things can hold weight again if you fix them slow and right. And when Evan left that day, I stayed on the porch a while longer, watching the light fade, grateful that some stories end, not with an explosion, but with quiet hands, rebuilding the same house that almost fell apart. A year later to the week, I found myself standing on the pier at Mallory Square in Key West, watching the sun melt into the Gulf of Mexico. The sky burned orange, then gold, then something I couldn't name. It looked almost like forgiveness. The air was thick with salt and street music. A saxophonist played something slow and aching. I leaned against the rail, phone in hand, and smiled at how ordinary peace could feel after so much noise. My screen lit up with a message from Evan. Payment Chapter 12 cleared. Porch rails painted. Proud of it. Attached was a photo, my duplex back home, gleaming white rails, sunlight spilling across the steps. I typed back, "Looks solid. You did good, son," then almost without thinking. I turned the camera on myself and took a picture of the sunset, the same shade of orange as that pie he never ate, and sent it with the caption, "Cozumel colors, Florida miles." He replied with a single thumbs up. Simple, respectful, no need for long speeches anymore. I sat on a bench near the water, pulled out my wallet, and found something I hadn't realized was still there. The old Cruise Co. invoice. The paper had yellowed slightly, edges curled. I turned it over, took my pen, and wrote a single line on the back. Debt paid is just weight you put down. Then I tore it in half and dropped it in the nearest trash bin. Watching it fall felt better than any courtroom victory ever could. Behind me, a young man was arguing into his phone. "Dad, it's just money," he said, exasperated. His voice hit me like an echo from another life. I almost turned around to say something, but stopped. Lessons land when they're earned, not borrowed. Instead, I looked back at the water and thought of all the nights I'd spent measuring my worth in dollars, invoices, and betrayals. Turns out justice isn't the end of the story. Peace is. As my flight boarded the next morning, I stood by the window watching the plane's reflections shimmer on the runway. I whispered, "We did it right," not to anyone living, but to my wife, the one who always told me that boundaries aren't walls. They're doors with locks that matter. When the wheels lifted off, clouds rolled beneath like folded sheets, white and perfect. Somewhere below, Evan was sanding another board, making something level and true. Maybe that's all legacy really is. Not what we leave, but what we correct before we go. The cabin lights dimmed. I closed my eyes, let the hum of the engines wash away the last of that old bitterness. For the first time since that lie about Cozumel, I wasn't waiting for anyone to make it right. I already had. You didn't lose me. You gave me away. And I gave myself back.